Welcome to The Memoir, where host Bobby Goldie self-reflects on the chapters of her life. She's persevered through cancer, depression, addiction, adoption, poverty, and abuse. These are just a few obstacles she's battled through and is sharing her struggles and successes as a reminder we are not broken. We are just human. Now here's your host, Bobby Goldie.
Recently, I was looking at my two precious little angels, my children. And right now they're about 8 years old, and I'm looking at them in their eyes, and I'm listening to them speak. And they sound like little babies yet. They are still little babies. They're still learning. They're still figuring things out. They still need their mommy and daddy. And it took me back, that moment when I was looking at them and listening to them. It took me back to my childhood. Like most parents, our goal is to always give our children a better life than we had. And that's my goal. I recall, it was well before third grade. So I believe I was 6 at the time. We lived on the south side at this time. And before, when I was in third grade, I lived on the north side, both in Milwaukee, and both were in the inner city, the ghetto. I was living on the south side at the time when we were living in these assisted living, not assisted living. They were like welfare apartments where the government paid a majority of your rent because you couldn't afford anything else or to pay full rent, but they were brand new apartments and they were in the ghetto, but they were nice. Oh my gosh. I thought it was like when my mom got into these, I thought we were living in the lap of luxury. It was pretty amazing. And I remember this, I had a group of friends, they were Hispanic kids. It was a big family, and they were so wonderful. And they were only about 3-4 blocks away from our apartment, so I could go over there. And I remember playing with them all the time. And I remember their mom and grandma always making such amazing, delicious food and homemade tortillas on the stove. It was just so much fun being there. And this one time we were playing, and I had my hair in a ponytail, and it was pretty long, and I was swinging around in circles. You know how kids do it, where you get really, really dizzy and you can't remember what you're doing. So I remember doing this. And as I was swinging around, I felt something pull on the back of my head, and I was like, what the heck is that? And as I'm turning around, it's still pulling, and hair starts falling. And it's falling everywhere. And there is the littlest guy with a giant pair of scissors that was giggling, that thought it was funny to cut my hair as my ponytail was swinging up in the air. At the moment, it was not funny at all to me. I started panicking and screaming, and I was devastated, and I kept telling everybody, my mom is going to kill me. She's going to kill me. And the kids started to calm me down, and their parents came in, they said it would be okay. So I had to go home. So the kids decided the best thing they could do was help me to walk me home and explain to my mother that it wasn't my fault. I did nothing wrong. It wasn't me. Their little brother was naughty, did it, and I had no clue, and they were going to help me. So walking home, my heart is racing. I'm already crying my eyes out. And I remember going to the patio door for some reason. I don't remember why. And my mom opened the patio door, and she looked at all of us, and the kids started explaining everything. And before they could finish, she grabbed me by my hair and yanked me into the house and slammed the patio door shut. And I remember her yanking me and smashing my head against the wall 5 times and yelling at me and telling me it was all my fault and I did it on purpose, and how could I not know that somebody was cutting my hair, and I'm 6. And then I remember her taking me by whatever was left of my ponytail and dragging me up the stairs, the carpeted stairs, and kicking me down the stairs, and grabbing me by my head again and smashing my head against the wall. I don't remember anything after that. I don't know if I passed out. I don't know if she continued to do it. I don't know if I've just blocked the rest out. I just don't really know. But that's the kind of things I remember in my childhood. I also remember one time, I think I was 6 or 7, because we were still living in that same apartment and we only lived there for 3 years, that I got a detention for talking in the lunchroom, and I was so afraid that I was going to get in trouble that I hid it from my mother because I knew I would get beaten again. Then I look back at this moment right now, thinking of my 8-year-old babies, and then I go back to them being 6. They were so tiny. They were so little. They're just little human beings, and I could never imagine putting my children through that. The funny part is, when I think back as I got older in life to my mother and those moments where she physically abused me, I try to remember, was she drinking at the time? But when you're really, really little, you can't really remember that. I just remember those vivid beatings that I got. But as I got older, I clearly remembered the beatings when she was drinking. So my assumption is she was drunk, or she was hungover, or she was pissed off she didn't have any booze. I don't know, but I'm pretty confident now that I look at everything on a go-forward basis. Alcohol, absolutely, it's something to play in her physical altercations with me. As I got older, even middle school and high school, the beatings never stopped. Or the way she responded to me never stopped. There would be many a times where she would come home from being out at the bar all day, all night. She would say that the house wasn't clean, that it was still dusty, that, the rugs with the little tassels at the end, the little strings, she'd be upset that the strings weren't straight on the ends of the rugs, and I'd get beaten the living crap out of. My mom wasn't even a big woman. She was like 5'2". So I was starting to get bigger than her, but I would never lay a hand on her. She was my mother, and I respected her, and I would just take the beatings. But then the beatings then started to lead to her kicking me out of the house. Yeah, it could be winter in Wisconsin. It could be below 0 with lots of snow. I would be in my PJs. I just got my shit kicked in. She'd kick me out of the house, and I'd be on the street with no shoes, in my PJs, freaking out. I would have to go to somebody's house, somewhere close, and knock on their door and ask if I could call a friend to come get me and take me to their house for the night. And then, you know what happened after that? The craziest thing. Then she'd call the police on me in the morning when I wasn't there to say I was a runaway. And then the police would come looking for me. And then I tried to have to explain to them, no, my mother was drunk, she beat me up, she kicked me out. It took a while, but eventually the police got the thing. They figured it out. They knew I wasn't bullshitting anymore. And this was a thing. And then when I'd get home with the police, the first few times it happened, I'd say to her, you kicked me out. You beat me up. You see why I got all these black and blue marks on me? You beat me up. And then you kicked me out. I didn't run away. Look, I'm still in my PJs from last night. I wouldn't run away with it being in my PJs. And she'd look at me with this look in her eyes, this evil look, probably very hungover too. And she would say, don't you make me feel guilty. You know I can't remember that. That's not nice of you. Why would you do that to me? That's so awful and so mean of you. Don't you try to make me feel guilty. And I just sit there like a deer in the headlights, like, what the hell's going on here? I didn't understand it. But after a few times, I realized that I didn't know if she remembered or not, but I realized that if I brought it up again, it was just going to cause more friction. And if I didn't shut my mouth, I'd probably get my teeth kicked in. So I stopped saying that. And I just went with the gig, once a month. Get your ass kicked in, get kicked out of your house, and then get the police called on you because you're a runaway. As you can see, there's a theme here, and it's alcohol. And I didn't realize until later probably in my early 20s, that my mother was an alcoholic. She was a raging alcoholic, and she was probably for my entire life, and I didn't even know it. I just loved her unconditionally. It didn't even matter what she did to me. I loved her, and I wanted her to love me. And I tried my hardest to just accept it, or accept her the way she was. As I got older, some of the things that I would do is first of all, she didn't let me go many places at all whatsoever unless I was working, which I started working at a very young age. I started babysitting and had a newspaper out and all of those things, even though my mother never worked. Kind of funny like that. But otherwise, she'd never let me go anywhere. But then when I even started dating, I would never, ever, or even like certain friends that maybe wouldn't understand my situation, I'd never bring them around my mother, or I would never even talk about my mother to anybody. I was so ashamed and so embarrassed. It was just a different life, and I was trying to be everything my mother wasn't. So I kept my personal life very separate from everybody else that was outside of my inner circle. And as I got older, I still didn't figure out that she was an alcoholic. It's crazy how long it takes. So I'm in college, and I'm working full-time, going to school full-time, and I'm working at this really large law office. I take that back. It wasn't a law office. I was done with that job. I was working at another large company. And there was probably, 250 employees in this location. We're downtown Milwaukee in this amazing office building. And there was a receptionist. And back in the day, we didn't have voicemail. So if you called my phone number at my desk and I didn't answer, the call would bounce to the receptionist, and then the receptionist would ask them if they wanted to leave a message or if they wanted them to page me. And then they would page me if that's what they wanted. So I remember one day I was in the office and I was working away, really loved my job, and I hear the receptionist page me. I must have been talking to somebody else in the office about an account or something, so I was away from my desk. And the receptionist pages me and asked me to come to the front desk. So I was like, all right, that's unusual. So maybe somebody dropped off a package for me on an account or something. So I walk up to the receptionist desk, and this older woman, she's probably in her, 60s or 70s, sweet woman. She's looking at me with this weird look on her face. I don't know what it was, like she saw death or something. It was very unusual because it just didn't fit her. And she says, Bobby, I have somebody on the phone that says they're your mother, and that if I don't get a hold of you, she's going to kill herself. And I just sat there, and I was ashamed, and I was angry, sad, and I'm trying to hold back the tears. So I tell her to transfer her to me, and I go back to my desk, and I told my mother to never call me again. And I told her if she called this number again, I would have the police come over to her house. And I hung up. And it's like, 11 a.m. on a Wednesday. And my mom was bombed. She was shit-faced. She's so drunk she's calling me. Probably doesn't even know why she's calling me. She probably didn't even remember calling me. and then tells a perfect stranger that if she couldn't talk to me, she can kill herself. That was it for me. That was the moment in time where I realized my mother was an alcoholic, a raging alcoholic. And I also realized I needed to get her out of my life. I couldn't do this anymore. So I stopped talking to her for a really, really long time. I called her the next day when I knew she'd be sober, before 11. Got her like at 7. And I explained to her what happened, and I told her I didn't care if she remembered or she didn't, but that behavior was unacceptable and I didn't deserve it. And because of that, I was stopping our relationship. I could no longer do this anymore. And if she decided quitting the alcohol abuse completely, then I would reconsider. But until then, to never call me again, because I had enough of her abuse, her verbal and physical abuse in my life. And I deserve better. And that was it. Years went by where I did not talk to my mother. Even though I lived in the same city and I had aunts and uncles and cousins and sisters, I separated myself. I had holidays at my apartment on off days, not the actual holidays, because my mother was the person that always had all the holidays at her house, but I had them on days that it wasn't the holidays, and I'd invite my extended family and so forth over, and some would come and some wouldn't, and nobody ever said anything to me about it. They all knew, and I lived like that for a while. And was it hard? Yeah, because my family, including my immediate family, was very close, but I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't understand it. I felt angry and upset with her, and I just wanted her to quit. Like, if she loved me, she would just quit. But she didn't. I know she kept drinking. People kept telling me she didn't change. She was just her. And I was angry. She chose alcohol over me. And you know what was funny is all that time, from the time I started working until that moment, I was giving her money. Even when I was a little girl, like 11 and 12, working, I gave my mother money. I helped her to support her. It's funny, right? She's supposed to support me, and here I am supporting her. So I just completely cut her off emotionally and financially. And I even thought financially, okay, that'll be it. She's going to need my money. She lives on welfare. She can hardly make it. She kept choosing alcohol. It was the craziest thing. How selfish of her. How evil of her. I was her daughter. Didn't she do enough to me? Didn't she love me? How could she love alcohol more than me? But to me, she did. So it's probably like, I don't know, I can't even remember. It's crazy. Some of these memories I have, and as I talk through them, some of you may wonder, how do I not know how many years I didn't talk to my mother? And I think part of the reason I lose my thoughts and memories in dates and years is because historically years and dates were awful to me, were miserable to me. So I don't put a lot of meaning into them. I think I just tried to block a lot of it out. So, and I don't know if they're really important in the grand scheme of things, honestly. They don't change anything. If I told you I was, not talking to her for 2 years or 6 years, does it really matter? I wasn't talking to my mother, and it was horrible and awful if it was 2 or 6. So I digress. So anyways, out of the blue, I got a call from her. She never called that whole time. So when she did call, I answered, and she asked if I could meet her, and she wanted to talk to me. So I did. I met her, and she proceeded to tell me that she was very, very sorry for what she's done to me, and that I turned out to be an amazing human being, and she doesn't get any credit for it. She doesn't deserve an ounce of credit, and that she was horrible to me. She was awful to me, and she apologized for all of the She didn't get into all the details, probably because she can't remember them all. But she didn't get into all the details, but she said she knows she did a lot of really, really awful things to me, and she understands if I never want to speak to her again. But she wanted to apologize and tell me how great I was and how I didn't deserve it all. And she also proceeded to tell me that, or ask me if I could give her another chance. And I knew she was still drinking. So I just sat there. And I can't even, my mother, here I am in my 20s, my mother never, ever apologized to me, ever. So I was sitting there and I was like, what? I thought I was like living in the Twilight Zone or something. I was like, what the hell is happening? She's apologizing to me. So I sat there knowing she's still drinking, but knowing she's sitting here in front of me sober and she's apologizing. And you could tell tears are running down her eyes and she meant it. So I decided to take a chance. I gave her a hug. And we hugged for a long time and we cried. And I told her that I absolutely love her and that I never stopped loving her and that I'm willing to give her a chance. However, there's got to be rules. The rules are she will not take a drink in front of me, ever. She will not be around me if she's had a drink. She will not call me when she's drinking. She will not call me if she's drunk. Period. And that she is going to treat me with the respect and give me the love I deserve. And she cried and she agreed. She said, absolutely, I will. I promise you. I will do those things, Bobby. You deserve those things. So that was how we got back on track. And for several years, it was great. She stuck to those rules and she was good by them. And I was happy to have her back in my life and we were slowly repairing things. And then as the years progressed, something very weird was happening in my family, including my extended family. We were all very close, like I continue to say. And with my mother, there were certain times my interaction with my family was limited, or with my mom. And I started to realize that it was because of her alcohol. She would have get-togethers or picnics at her house, and I wouldn't be invited to them. I wouldn't even know about them. Everybody kept them really quiet. But because she wanted to keep her promise to me. She couldn't change herself. That was who she was. She was an alcoholic. But she loved me enough to respect the rules. And as time went on, this was really starting to bother me, that my mother and my family acted different around me. And I wouldn't even doubt if many of my family members, because of what went through with my mother, were starting to think that I was judging them as well. So I had to make a decision. Do I accept my mother for who she is, flaws, alcoholism and all? Or do I just walk away? Because this was not healthy. This was good, and she was making great strides with me, and I was with her, and I loved her. But I didn't feel like I got the real her, and I didn't get the real family. We're all human, right? None of us are perfect. And I started to realize, and as I talked to people, that, this alcoholism is a disease. And it's very hard to beat, especially when you lived with it your whole life. And her parents were alcoholics. So how could I expect her to change? So I had to just decide, do I accept her and my family just the way they are, or do I move on? And I love my family, every single one of them. They're amazing, thoughtful, caring, loving, compassionate, funny, smart, kind people. And they have flaws, and so do I. But their flaws have made them the people they are today, and including my mother. And again, when all you're around is this crazy world you live in, you don't even know any different. So I talked to my mother and I told her, you know what, Mom? You don't need to do that anymore. You don't need to hide this drinking from me anymore. I want you to be yourself. Except, can I change the conditions a little bit? If you're getting angry drunk, I don't want to be around it. Or if you're really, really drunk and you're just drunk dialing, don't drunk dial me. But otherwise, I want to be at your picnics and your barbecues, and I want to be at your parties, and I want to be with the family, and I want everybody to have fun and laugh and be who they are and not feel like they have to have a wall up when I'm around, including you. Another breakthrough. That was actually the turning point in our relationship. She could be her. She could be her loving, caring, considerate woman that would give the shirt off her back to anybody. And I'll talk more about my mom and about our relationship. But what I really realized is that if somebody's an alcoholic and you want them to change, and you want them to change for you, they're not going to. They have to want to change. And sometimes, if you want a relationship with them, may it be a friend or a spouse or a family member, you have to look at yourself and inside yourself and decide, do you want to be with an addict or an alcoholic or not? Those are the two choices. That's it. There's no other choices. Because even if you're dealing with an addict or an alcoholic that hasn't used for a while, it doesn't get rid of the disease. The disease is always there. It doesn't go away. There is no cure. So you need to be prepared that your life is going to be different, even if they're clean. Your life's going to be different. There's going to be different rules and triggers and situations that you have to deal with. And if you like to drink, you have to manage that in the relationship. And you also have to think about that there could be a relapse. There could be multiple relapses. That's just natural. And then if you're dealing with somebody like my mother that doesn't want to change, that is accepting of themselves and their disease just the way they are, you're going to have to deal with all that comes with it. And you're going to have to decide what your boundaries are and what you can live with and what you can't. But what you don't get to choose is them not being an alcoholic. That doesn't go away. So I chose that. And I have to admit, that was the best decision I have ever made when it comes to my mother. Now, would I make that decision with other people in my life? Maybe a spouse or a friend or another relative? Maybe not, because every situation is completely different. But for me and my relationship with my mother, that was absolutely the right situation in my life. And I don't regret it, and I don't look back. And I think I needed those times away from her and the baby steps back into her life to realize that that was the right step. Addiction is a crazy, crazy little thing. And again, there's no right answer or wrong answer. And again, the disease doesn't go away, but we all get choices. My choice was to continue the relationship with my mother, my loving mother. So I don't even know how to end this thing, right? This is tough because it's a long, crazy story. And my words of wisdom, I think, are what I've ended with. And actually, I'm exhausted and I'm on the verge of tears because that was a lot to bring up. So with that, thanks again for listening. I hope your day is filled with lots of joy and lots of memories. And as I always say, be a better person than you were yesterday.
Thanks for listening to The Memoir. Let's work to remove the stigma of taboo topics. We only have on average 30,000 days on this earth, so let's make the best of our remaining days together. Get in touch with Bobby Goldie at BOBBIEGOLDIE.com and share your story.